So this is the fault of the NCAA. This is the fault of all of the college football coaches and administrators who have hoarded power and money for decades. So what happened was, in a time in the sport where it became obvious, impossibly obvious to any reasonable observer that players needed to have some modicum of freedom over where they went to school and some reasonable ability to make a little money based upon their accomplishments there. Long after the time when that became obvious to everyone, the people who actually had the ability to stop it from happening dug their heels in. So names like Mark Emmert jumped to mind. I remember having a fight. Fight is the wrong word. I remember going off on Kirby Smart when he first became the coach of Georgia because he replaced a guy named Mark Richt. And Mark Richt had a policy where if the players who were playing for him were not happy there, they could transfer. And the first thing Kirby Smart did when he got to Georgia was remove that rule and place all sorts of limitations on players' ability to transfer out. Mm-hmm. That's patently unfair. And, of course, it goes without saying, all the conversations we had about whether or not players could receive a turkey sandwich, the gold pants, all of these stories that have happened over the many, many years, up to and including people thought that we were kidding. There were literally rules in the NCAA rule book that said you could serve players bagels with cream cheese, but not with peanut butter because it changed the dynamic of what you were giving them. And by refusing to yield an inch, the sport was forced to change a mile. This thing wound up in court. And the people who have been running it their own way for their own benefit got laughed at by any objective observer. And so the result, instead of reasoned, moderate, reasonable change, wherein players could choose to transfer under the right circumstances, would not have ridiculous limitations placed on them solely because of a coach's whim. I remember having Bo Ryan, the former basketball coach at Wisconsin, on Mike and Mike one day, and we were yelling. I mean, we didn't yell at almost anybody, but we were yelling back and forth with him because he just started blocking players from going where they wanted to go, and he couldn't even give us a reason why. His reason was, well, that just seems to be what everybody does. So the point is, by refusing to make reasonable concessions and put in place a system that actually makes sense and wasn't and isn't completely unfair to players, they were forced to yield any semblance of control. So what we have now is the wild, wild west. I don't think anyone looks at what's going on now and saying, oh, yeah, this is the best way to do this. The transfer portal being what it is, when 1,000 players are in it every single day, or every single season, when coaches are recruiting their own players to stay every single year, or recruiting other people's players every single year to come leave their programs, when these NIL deals are now completely out of control, that no one is in control of the situation. I don't even know if it's a bad thing, but it's such a different thing that I think this is why Nick Saban is out of it. I think this is why Mike Krzyzewski is out of it. I think this is why, who else just got out of it recently? Jay Wright
Boeheim
got out of it.
Roy.
Well, Boeheim, I think, but Roy, these legends are like, well, this is not what we do.
It's a different job.
It's a different job. And look, I think this system is better than what it was. I think having players be completely unable, indentured servants, unable to make any decisions about their own lives and their own futures and what was in their own best interest, that was not better than this. But the fault, the finger of blame, if you think the current system is not good, don't blame the players. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Blame the overfed, fat coaches who took advantage of this for years, the ones who made $100 million contracts and said, if any one of my players ever get paid a cent, I'm getting out of the business because this is not what it's supposed to be. While they live in their mansions, those are the people to blame. And the NCAA and the ridiculous rules that existed so that and the refusal to yield so much as an inch. What's the expression? Give them an inch,
take a mile.
If they had given them an inch, they wouldn't have gotten a mile. But by refusing to give an inch, it wound up going a mile. And I think Nick Saban took a look at this thing and said, what do I need this for?
So you said in your tweet yesterday, Nick Saban didn't need to put up with the utter nonsense that the sport has become. So you're telling me, in an honest moment, you think Nick Saban would say or will say, this is an unrecognizable thing, and I don't like it, so I want it out, before he necessarily would have otherwise.
Absolutely. I don't know if he'll say that. I doubt he'll say it. But I think he will in interviews with people who he trusts and will have a real conversation with him about it. I think he will talk openly about how broken the system is, as Mike Krzyzewski has and others. And I think that's a good thing. Now, whether anyone is listening, whether anyone can do anything about it, it is just a shambles. You don't have anyone in charge. You don't have anyone in charge in the big picture. You don't have anyone in charge in the little picture. You got schools racing from this conference to that conference, get out of this deal, buyouts, all that stuff. It's unrecognizable. Again, I am pro-player. I'm pro-player getting money. I'm pro-player having the freedom of choice to go where they want to go. But I'm not sitting here saying there should be no rules. I'm not sitting here saying, I've never said there should be absolutely no structure in place to the system, because what you have now is there's no way this can be sustained. It's unsustainable. And I think Nick Saban looked at it and said, look, if I had 20 more years to coach, maybe I'll ride it out when it finds some reasonable new normal. But I think he's looking at day to day, year to year. What do I need this nonsense for? I can go work at ESPN on game day, and I can go play all my golf, and Miss Terry and I can watch Netflix, which made me laugh when I read it yesterday, and all that. And I think that's why he did what he did.